Welcome back, team. In this screencast, we're going to start Chapter 12 and talk about food production and the environment. While agriculture is necessary for our survival, it has its own environmental impacts. The chapter case study focuses on Growing Power, an urban agriculture organization based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and founded by Will Allen, an ex-professional basketball player. Growing Power focuses on the problem of food deserts, urban areas with little or no easy access to nutritious food. Growing Power grows food for the community and runs educational programs about growing and eating healthy food. This map from the U.S. Department of Agriculture shows the location of food deserts in the United States in green. Food deserts are defined as places where supermarkets are located more than 1 mile away in urban areas and more than 10 miles away in rural areas. This is Will Allen, the founder of Growing Power in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, in 2018, Growing Power ran into some financial trouble and had to shut down. In Section 12.1, we're going to talk about what food security is and why it's difficult to attain. Food security is defined as having daily access to enough nutritious food to lead active and healthy lives. Food insecurity is defined as chronic or long-term hunger and poor nutrition. Food insecurity can be caused by a number of different things, including political instability, war, poverty, and bad weather. Chronic hunger and malnutrition can be caused by a lack of nutrients, and nutrients can be divided into two categories: macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients are nutrients that are needed in large quantities, such as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Micronutrients are nutrients that are needed in small quantities and include things like vitamins and minerals. Chronic or long-term undernutrition can occur when people do not eat enough food to meet their basic energy needs. Chronic malnutrition can occur when people do not eat enough protein or other key ingredients. Chronic malnutrition can lead to impaired growth, mental development, and immunity. In the photograph on this slide, you see a child with chronic malnutrition. The swelling of his belly is caused by a lack of protein in his diet. Countries and regions can also experience famine, which is a severe shortage of food in some given area. In this photograph, these people are living through famine in Somalia, which was caused by drought. Many people around the world, especially in less developed countries, do not get a sufficient amount of micronutrients in their diets. These people have deficiencies in vitamins and minerals that can cause illness. For example, people who do not get enough iron in their diets develop a type of anemia called pernicious anemia. Symptoms of pernicious anemia include weakness, bleeding of gums, jaundice, which is the yellowing of the skin and eyes, and loss of appetite. People who lack enough iodine in their diets can develop goiters. Goiters are enlarged thyroid glands, shown on the right. Eating too much can cause health problems as well. Overnutrition occurs when people have excess body fat from too many calories and not enough exercise. And the health effects of overnutrition include lower productivity and life expectancy, and greater susceptibility to disease or illness. In Section 12.2, we're going to talk about how food is produced. 3 different systems account for most of the food production in the world today. Croplands are where plants are grown. Croplands account for 77% of food production on 11% of the world's land area. The three main crops grown on croplands are wheat, rice, and corn. Rangelands, pastures, and feedlots are where animals are raised. These account for 16% of food production on 29% of the world's land area. Finally, aquaculture is where fish, shellfish, and seaweed are cultivated and account for about 7% of food production. One of the products of the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century was industrialized agriculture. The goal of industrialized agriculture is to steadily increase crop yields, maximizing the number of people that can be fed and maximizing profits. Industrialized agriculture involves the intensive use of financial capital or money, heavy equipment, fossil fuels, water, fertilizers, and pesticides. Industrialized agriculture also depends on monoculture, or growing a single crop. Examples include the wheat, corn, and soy farms of the United States and plantations in developing countries that grow things like coffee beans, bananas, and palm trees for palm oil. Traditional agriculture differs from industrialized agriculture because it depends more often on low-input polyculture. Low input because it doesn't depend on large investments of money, equipment, or materials, and polyculture because instead of growing one single crop, many crops will be grown. Traditional agriculture can be divided into traditional subsistence agriculture and traditional intensive agriculture. In traditional subsistence agriculture, a small group of people, such as a family, will grow food for themselves using human labor and draft animals. One example is slash and burn agriculture in tropical rainforest, where a group of people go in, cut a section of forest down, burn it to fertilize the soil they will later grow food on. In traditional intensive agriculture, people will get a higher yield through the use of manure to fertilize their fields and irrigation techniques to better provide their crops with water. Again, polyculture, or growing multiple crops, is preferred over monoculture, or growing a single crop. Polyculture has many benefits over monoculture. Let's talk about the benefits of polyculture. Polyculture requires less fertilizers because different plants will use different nutrients in different ways. Polyculture also protects soil from erosion because you can grow plants year-round, reducing the amount of time that your soil is exposed to the elements. Polyculture also reduces pesticide use because having many different plants creates habitat, oftentimes for the predators of the pests on your farm. Polyculture also reduces the need for irrigation because different plants will use water at different times and at different rates. And finally, polyculture provides economic stability because a farm with many different crops can better survive bad weather, disease, or crop failure. Another type of agriculture is organic agriculture, and it's currently on the rise. Organic agriculture involves growing crops without synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. And while it has environmental benefits, it does produce less food than conventional farming. This infographic summarizes the differences between industrialized agriculture and organic agriculture, Remember that organic agriculture does not use synthetic pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, GMOs, antibiotics, or hormones in food production. Let's take a closer look at industrialized agriculture. Most of the advances in industrialized crop production took place during two green revolutions. The first green revolution occurred in the 1950s and 60s and involved the advancement and modernization of industrialized crop production techniques involving the use of machinery, fertilizers, and pesticides. The second green revolution is happening right now, and it's involved the development of fast-growing dwarf varieties and GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. As a result of the first and second green revolutions, world grain production has tripled. This graph shows the increase in world grain production as a result of the green revolutions. This graph shows world grain production per capita or per person during the same time period. It shows that food production is only just keeping up with population growth. Let's talk about industrialized agriculture in the United States. Agriculture and the buying and selling of food are all considered agribusiness. The average American farmer feeds 129 people, and the sales generated by agribusiness are greater than auto, steel, and housing combined. Unfortunately, there are hidden costs associated with agribusiness. Subsidies, or money provided by the government, cause farmers to grow more food than they need to. Also, pollution and environmental degradation are not reflected in the price of produce. We also need to talk about how genes have been and currently are manipulated to create new varieties of plants and animals that are tastier, larger, hardier, or more nutritious. This occurred during two gene revolutions. During the first gene revolution, new varieties were created through crossbreeding and artificial selection. This was a slow process that took many generations to occur. One example is on the left side here, with wild strawberries on the left side of the dish and farmed strawberries on the right side of the dish. The second gene revolution occurred when genetic engineering was used to create transgenic organisms with DNA from two sources. Meat production has also increased steadily over time. Animals for meat are raised on pastures, rangelands, and feedlots. A feedlot is shown in the photograph here and is also called a CAFO, or concentrated animal feeding operation. The increase in meat production has also led to an increase in the demand for grain needed to feed these animals. By some estimates, meat requires 20 times the land per calorie that plants do. Many people see a plant-based diet as the environmentally friendly way to go. This graph shows global meat production between 1950 and the present in millions of tons. This is another photograph of a feedlot, CAFO, or concentrated animal feeding operation. Wild populations of marine and aquatic life cannot keep up with human demand. A fishery is defined as a concentration of a particular species suitable for commercial harvesting. 30% of fisheries around the world are overfished, and 57% are being harvested at full sustainable capacity. As wild stocks of marine and aquatic species have dwindled, people have resorted to growing food in the water. This is known as aquaculture and is currently the fastest growing type of food production in the world. The development of aquaculture is also known as the Blue Revolution, and it's come with its own set of environmental consequences. It can be a source of both disease and pollution. The photo on the left here shows a tilapia farm in Uganda, and the photo on the right shows a shrimp farm in the Philippines. This graph shows total world fish catch in millions of metric tons between 1950 and the present. It shows how wild catches of fish have leveled out while aquaculture production has increased to keep up with the demand of a growing world population.